All right, traders, welcome to today's recap. This is Monday, April 16th, and this is Christian from Tribeca Trade Group. So let's go through the major averages. Pretty strong day all around. I'm going to talk a little bit about market breadth today, which was very green. I would say a lot of good names performing. So you had SPY up 80 basis points, Qs up 0.75%, IWM small caps up 90 basis points. And then a few other areas like transports up 2.3%. Trucking stocks very strong today. I've got Netflix right in front of you. Really good numbers across the board. Their streaming, their subscribers continue to grow in the U.S., which I was a little bit surprised at their growth. I was thinking that they were going to need a more international growth, but it seems like they just continue to kind of knock the ball out of the park in terms of the U.S. numbers. So I did put on a trade for this, and that should be looking. I didn't know if they were going to knock the ball out of the park. In terms of what they're doing, they're up to 327. I think the implied move was 337, so it's coming a little bit shy of that. What I did was, the implied move was 9.9%, so the options were fairly, I thought, expensive. That was right around what Netflix did last quarter. So it looks like it's going to be up a little bit shy of that, depending where it opens tomorrow. We've got a long way to get till tomorrow. What I did was I sold the put spread. I took advantage of the high premiums, and I sold a put spread. So that's a bullish trade. I sold the 300, 295. I'll collect $200 for that. I just put this on for a 2-lot. So it could be a nice $400 trade. We'll see how that goes for tomorrow. So I figured I might as well talk about Netflix because it just reported. And we did go over that in the trading room and ways to play it. Looks pretty good. I also went long UNH for tomorrow, so we'll see how that one goes as well via a call spread. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the market action. Always start with the S&P chart, which I tend to think is a little bit boring because there's a lot of other movers going on out there. But we'll start there, and then we drill in. So we are up to the 50-day moving average. So we've got some nice, I'm not too worried about the 50-day moving average. It is some resistance to get through, but the main thing for me is we turned the corner. I think we were really hesitating at this level. It's not like we've jumped over it by leaps and bounds, but again, it's more of like a baby step type approach. Again, we could see a little back and fill here, but we have been moving in the right direction. And I think that's enough progress for now. Again, that level, I thought Friday's high was in particular was noteworthy that we got through that. And again, because if you look at this 5-minute chart, you can see there's just a lot of this resistance. So we're through it. We'll see if we can have some continuation. But again, I think pretty good. What really kind of excited me last week was small caps. They were up another 1% today. If I can bring up the small cap. They closed pretty much on the highs today. And you could see this turned the corner last week and, really kind of showed the, a little bit of a hint of what was going on in the strength in the overall market. And that is now kind of right in the middle of the value area. Again, and it's done its job. It's above the 5, the 20, and the 50. So again, why is this important to kind of go over this? Because now we're trying to retake an uptrend, and the moving averages are really good to just kind of tell you whether or not you're doing that. Now that we're above all three, the trend is your friend. And now that we've kind of got through that work. Again, it doesn't mean that the game's over and we're going to break out to new highs, but it's progress. The other thing that I kept hearing last week was some negativity about the transports and Dow theory. And oh my God, the transports are breaking down. They never broke the 200-day moving average. Look at what they did today, up 2.3%. The truckers were absolutely on fire today. I think that was JB Hunt that reported earnings. You can see finished up 6%. Take a look at this chart. I saw this earlier. This XPO looks awesome, doesn't it? Beautiful looking uptrend. The last time it hit the 50-day moving average, it bounced pretty hard. This was back in the beginning of February with everything, broke out to new highs, has come back in, retested the 50-day moving average. Really nice looking couple last candles. You got an MACD crossover, which we're seeing a lot of these now, and I would watch for new highs in XPO. I think that was the case in a few other trucker names as well. Very, very strong. Uh, so again, I think that's just a really good sign. We started to hear like Dow theory being quoted. Again, if you're not familiar with it, but usually the transports and industrials confirm one another. So it's really nice to see the outperformance in the transports the last couple of days. What a week for them. Really, really strong. And then besides that, you had the base metals. I know a lot of people think it's just energy. Energy's doing its thing. Energy's outperforming, but you've also got the materials. You've got a few other groups that are also looking pretty good. XLB. So again, before I move the chart, DBB, by the way, is your base metals ETF. This has futures contracts of copper, zinc, and aluminum. And it didn't finish on the highs, but it's definitely moving in the right direction for that particular group. But XLB was one of your best performers. So what I really like, and I'll get to today's option activity. XLE was, by the way, was up another 1% today. So again, how long are these trends going to last? Well, no one can tell you how long the trend is going to last. But right now, this has got momentum to it. It's above the 5-period short-term moving average. Stay long. As long as it stays this trend, it could go all the way up here. I mean, you never know. But the one thing that you do know is it's got some really strong momentum to it, and the short-dated call buyers are still coming out of the woodwork, buying a whole bunch of different names, and I'll go over those names. In fact, why don't I do that, and then I'll talk about my overall market view. So you could go through, just as we saw towards the end of last week, it's a lot of different names that are catching call buying. Rig, I believe, has exploded to the upside at this point. Really nice performance. That, again, is continuing to move higher. A lot of green bars in a row there. Devon Energy saw the MLPs were really strong again today. They started to catch last week. That's AMLP is the whole ETF. They've been buying calls in the three big MLP names now for going on for like a month. They just added EPD towards the end of last week, which a couple traders made some money on that trade in the room today. But it's been ETP and ETE. Right? Did I say that right? ETP, yeah. And really nothing has happened for a while. So you kind of had to just sit and be patient for those names. But sometimes that's all it takes is like 1 or 2 days and you get all the gains that you had to sit through. If you had to sit through a couple weeks of pain, sometimes just a couple days, the way sometimes these stocks move can really ratchet these things higher. I believe this is another MLP name or pipeline name. PAA, which has seen repeat call buying, also saw some calls today. Devon Energy, I took some of these calls today. It's a short dated trade. It's a counter trend trade, but the stock has made a double bottom at this point. They bought the 37 calls, which are up here. And again, all you need is a couple days of momentum, which I'm hoping this gets. It didn't really do much today, but you could see a big block of calls went up. There was a block of 200,000 shares, but it could be the market maker hedging because these were swept when they went up, swept an opening. They didn't print on the Midwest or anything like that, so they do look like they're bought. And again, 50 cents, I think it's worthy of a shot considering how much the momentum is in these names. A few other trades that we saw outside of the end. Valero also saw some, again, a lot of this stuff, again, very short dated. They're just looking for momentum to carry through for maybe a couple more days, it looks like. We saw a nice Yandex call buyer right as they were talking about they may not go through with, I guess, the Russia sanctions. I'm not really sure. I have to verify that headline, but I know that there was some talk about that as well earlier. IWM, speaking of IWM, we did see some calls. ETP, we saw more of those today. IGT, which we saw calls last week, we saw more IGT calls. Goose, this is a nice looking chart, by the way, this Goose. And I know some are just outright long in cash. It's only a $34 stock. You could see that it's just kind of resting here. They bought some Goose calls pretty aggressively. This went up towards the end of the day. I did not take this trade. I just kind of did enough trading for the day. It wasn't a huge trade, but we don't see goose that much. It was about a $100,000 trade when you add both of these orders up. So again, pretty decent for a small cap name. They also threw in some BAVA. BAVA's been a tough name. The last couple weeks, the chart kind of looks like it's been breaking down. A lot of consolidation on that 200-day moving average. But they bought calls in the beginning of the day, and they bought calls right at the close too. So maybe something to keep an eye on. Also, some decent put buying to go around. In the beginning of the day, I think Trump is going to talk about drug pricing in about 2 weeks. There was a headline pre-market. Maybe that facilitated some guys to buy some puts in both of the biotech ETFs there. There was some more shop puts, big GoPro, EA, and a little bit of Tesla puts. All right, so that was the option activity today. It wasn't, I think I already mentioned Yandex. Yeah, I mean, it was a good handful of trades. I would say that the major themes is that they're still buying energy names short term. And then a couple other names that saw some light call buying. A couple small cap names like Michaels. CCJ, the uranium name, saw some call buying on possibly, some political stories out about uranium and so forth. I think sanctions or maybe not sanctions, I'm not sure. But all the uranium names caught a bid, and CCJ, which is in that ballpark, also saw some calls. All right, so what is, does this feel a little bit different? I just wanted to give my quick market view. This video is now about 10 minutes old, so that's just about as long as I like to go. But I think this is a little bit different, from when we rallied here in the middle of February. What was really carrying the whole market was technology. There wasn't really much else that was participating. So even though we're lower than the levels that we were back up here, I kind of feel like it's a bit of a stronger rally in terms of more sectors participating. We've talked about energy, materials did well, transports. This wasn't so much the case. I think back here, I think a lot of what really carried us was more of the momentum names, which is fine. But because tech is the biggest weight in the S&P. But in order for like a sustained rally, I think you do need a bigger participation to take place. Just a couple other trades. I'll just show you what I did today. Schwab, I put on a trade for earnings. We saw some calls that went up on Friday. That worked out very well. Schwab was up 4% today. So it looks like I may have taken that trade off a little bit early. I think Schwab could actually run here. Look at the chart, how it closed. Look at the MACD crossover. So, and sometimes you find these things. So I took off that whole trade. I was only holding weeklies. So at this point, maybe I want to roll out. I actually put on TD Ameritrade today. So again, don't mind going over my trades. I always am completely transparent with what I take. I put on TD Ameritrade reports next week, I believe. I put on some May call spreads. I just wanted to participate. But if you go down to our trades channel, we also have a private Twitter feed as well that you can subscribe to for the first week for only $7. So check us out. I think I think you really like the service that we provide, as well as the collaborative team environment that we have in our group chat, in our trading room, that we have in Slack. A few other trades that I did today. I talked about Devon. I did not take any of that trade off or anything like that. BHP, I added to that position. I went over that this weekend, why I like that one. I got out of all of my Raytheon trade for profits. Like I said, I got out of Schwab for profits. Yandex, I put a small trade on in that. And XLK, this was a limited risk reversal. Worked really well. Almost a double on the call side. So what I did on this trade about 2 weeks ago was I bought calls outright, and I shorted a put spread, which is also a bullish trade. So I ended up collecting. I sold this at $1.97 a couple weeks ago. I bought it back for 66 cents. That's just half the trade that I took off today. So some trades that I put on last couple weeks are really starting to work out very well. All right, that's it for today's recap. Hopefully I'll see you tomorrow in the trading room, and have a great night.